In this lesson, I will teach you some theoretical concepts that will help you arrange your project. And in this course, we won't cover each part in its entirety, but the important thing is that you have a general framework that includes each of those parts so you can understand how to continue it on your own. Well, if you're ready, let's begin. Let's start with some general business concepts. You might wonder why it's important to understand the business, even if we're undertaking a project that we might not want to expand to a business level. It's important to understand and categorize it, to structure our expectations and enhance the impact of our efforts to the fullest extent possible. So, what kinds of businesses are there? I've categorized them into two primary types for better understanding. Large enterprises and small to medium enterprises. Let's explore examples to clarify these categories and understand their distinctions. For example, for large ventures or companies, we can mention Pull&Bear. For a well-known global enterprise, our standing is clear. However, when it comes to a budding startup, let's consider Savixur, an up-and-coming Argentine brand making waves and witnessing substantial expansion within the vibrant streetwear market. Let's see some details to understand what makes them different. Large enterprises or companies deal with substantial demand volumes, targeting a broad audience to reach these levels. They manage considerable investments and employ serialized, repetitive processes to reduce costs and enhance efficiency. Small and medium enterprises, on the other hand, handle a low volume of demand. They target a more specific audience, generally what we would call a niche market. They handle a reduced investment and conduct fewer scheduled production procedures, which might ultimately result in somewhat higher costs. And what are the designs like for these two types of ventures or companies? Although special editions or exceptions to the rule can be found, it can be argued that big corporations manufacture more mass-produced products to widen their appeal and attract a broader consumer base, while small or medium enterprises have the potential to produce more distinctive and unique pieces or creations that can appeal to smaller audiences or what we would call a niche. Where will we focus in this course? This course will focus on processes and details for small and medium enterprises. Let's further distinguish within small and medium enterprises. These categories contain segments that appear alike but have distinct differences. Understanding these is key to effectively positioning your project. Segments that may appear alike yet hold differences worth noting to effectively position your project. Recognizing these distinctions is crucial for success. And influencer artists. The term influencer might seem a bit strange in this context, but let me explain why I use it. An influencer is someone with recognized credibility in a specific subject area or field, and due to their social media presence and influence, can evolve into a compelling and highly engaging advocate for a brand's message and values. Alright, let's return to the difference between independent brands and these mentioned influencers, with some more concrete examples to explain what I mean. For independent brands, Dos Lobos Chile is noteworthy. This Chilean venture offers outstanding garments and is described as a local niche brand established by a young couple. Their unique approach and quality products make them stand out in the fashion industry, as a form of self-expression of their tastes and artistic interests. Okay, now that we have a slightly clearer picture of what I mean, let's say with these images, and understanding a bit more about what it's about, let's look at some more specific features. Independent brands often communicate as a collective entity. They are typically a venture formed by a media group rather than individuals, and this is reflected in their communication style. To illustrate this concept further, let's examine some examples of how these brands express themselves through their communications. When we look at some of Dos Lobos' communications, we can understand, for instance, that Dos Lobos never introduces the creators, or at least not regularly. They use carefully crafted studio images. They frequently post images of their audience in their clothes, as this serves as their sole somewhat unstructured platform for expression and interaction. Alright, I hope this more or less helps you get an idea of what I mean. Now, if you agree, let's move on to influencer artists to understand the difference between these two. For influencer artists, one notable example is Mercedes Bazin, also known as Mechi Bazin. She is an Argentine illustrator and designer recognized for her distinctive and unique identity styles that set her apart. Mechi has created numerous illustrations for Argentine musicians like Pablo Londra and designed clothing for global brands and streamers, showcasing her versatile talent, among other remarkable creations. Now you have a better understanding of what I mean by the term influencer artist in this context. Let's move on to see some of their characteristics. When analyzing an influencer artist, we realize that, for example, they engage the audience on a personal level. Their venture or discipline prioritizes being artists and people first, with business coming afterward. And ultimately, it's not a group of people, but one person doing everything, sometimes with help from external people in certain cases. Now, let's review examples of Mechie's communications to illustrate what I mean by this approach in their work. When we look at some of Mechie's communications, we can see that, for example, Mechie shares many images of her personal life. In contrast, her profile is mainly focused on her work. Above all, we note an idea of understanding what happens backstage in her work, which captivates the audience somehow. In my view, it's because you start understanding her inspiration's origin, delve deeper into her process, and in many instances, you also engage with artists or individuals closely connected to her work. Very well, now that you have a general picture of the idea, I believe we understood a bit about the notions of these two types of ventures and their characteristics. I invite you to see more about how these brands or influencers produce. Alright, but before defining the production process, what's a typical production cycle? The production cycle consists of 5 stages. The creative process, where I design my shirts, followed by production, where the shirts are printed. Sales, where I sell my shirts. Distribution, where I manage the distribution and shipping of my shirts to customers. And finally, the after-sales stage. This is where I address customer service issues related to the products they have received. I mention these stages and the cycle because it's crucial for you to grasp each one. This understanding helps you identify which stage you're in during your work process and how to navigate it effectively. Most importantly, will impact one another. In this course, I will place much more emphasis on the creative process. However, I also encourage you to continue exploring the other stages on your own to perfect them. Now then, how does an independent brand produce? Typically, we encounter 2 types of production with independent brands. Firstly, there's stock production. Secondly, there's on-demand production. Let me explain what I mean by each of these approaches in more detail. In stock production, we create a set amount of product and sell based on this inventory. This means we can only sell what we have produced, limiting sales to existing stock that we have produced. Otherwise, if someone were to buy the product from us outside, won't receive it. This stock can be prepared in advance or produced as needed. Let's explore the distinction between these 2 production methods. In anticipated stock, we'll see that I need to produce it myself to move forward with the other stages. I first need to print my shirts. Afterward, sell and distribute the items accordingly to the plan. In a demand-driven stock approach, I collaborate with clients to define the stock during a pre-sale phase. Following this, I produce and deliver the items. Essentially, I forecast the demand for my shirts with clients, procure the necessary stock, and then proceed to ship the products to them accordingly. Among stock production methods are high-volume workshops that usually employ screen printing and low-volume operations that commonly utilize vinyl or direct-to-garment (DTG) printing techniques for their flexibility and quality output. Examples of print-on-demand companies include Printify and Printful. These are reputable international firms that link with printing services globally, ensuring high-quality production and distribution of custom items. There, you can select the types of suppliers that seem most convenient, considering the region and prices. Somehow, you'll be able to connect with companies or printing services that will allow you to have a larger volume and generate stock in advance, increase quantities and produce inventory in advance to boost volume. They can also contact the workshops directly if they wish. Printful and Printify's benefit is their ability to connect you with a diverse client base through one platform, simplifying the process. Now that we understood stock production more, let's move to print-on-demand production. In this case, I can mention an example of a stock demand company. That was the cost. Everpress is a trendy UK firm that organizes campaigns and enables you to launch campaigns to pre-sell your t-shirts. It's a great way to manage sales in advance. They create items specifically for you, they utilize eco-friendly workshops, and a core motto of the company is to avoid making products that won't be used later. This approach ensures that resources are not wasted on unnecessary items. They equip you with the necessary tools to pre-sell your t-shirts, making sure that each aspect of production seems as if it has already been pre-sold, thus optimizing resource usage and minimizing waste. Having grasped stock production, let's delve into print-on-demand production, which offers a flexible approach to creating custom items. In on-demand production, each product is crafted specifically for the individual order, allowing for personalized creation. You can either handle the production techniques yourself or outsource them. This method ensures that every item is made to order, reducing waste and optimizing resources. Let's explore this concept with a more visual perspective to better understand its application and benefits. How this form of production is represented. We can see how one person can buy our product piece by piece, and production is entirely tied to the purchase. This, for example, will prevent us from needing an initial investment to generate stock, allowing us to have an infinite stock, so to speak. That means there will always be shirts in every size. We will never run out of a size, for instance. You might then wonder what methods of production they usually employ. Well, it turns out that in contrast to stock production, the primary techniques used here are vinyl cutting and direct printing. These methods enable handling significantly smaller and more personalized order quantities. To provide print-on-demand company examples, we're familiar with Threadless. Society6, along with other renowned companies, is based in the US and has accumulated many years of experience in the industry. From my perspective, I highly recommend them due to their significantly optimized processes. Their efficiency in handling orders is commendable, making them a top choice. And they typically require extensive documentation to execute the process optimally. Nevertheless, it is advisable to conduct local research to identify particular suppliers available in your area. This approach can significantly lower expenses and ensure you receive tailored assistance. This is crucial for printing and especially shipping and logistics, not just for you, but primarily for the end consumer's benefit and satisfaction. Now that we've explored these concepts with examples, let's quickly review what we've covered to ensure a comprehensive understanding. So let's delve into the differences between stock and on-demand models. For stock, we need a precise understanding of our product's anticipated demand. This includes knowing the specific design elements, sizes available, and total quantity needed. We must commit to producing these items ahead of time, which requires ongoing oversight as we work towards selling each unit. And the profit margin is usually higher since production is upfront. We can set the desired margin and sell it, which is typically higher. This approach often yields better profitability. German, on the other hand, we can design as many designs as we want. We don't have to invest in production initially. It doesn't require much oversight since, for example, these platforms I mentioned earlier operate almost automatically. However, our profit margin will be somewhat constrained because these platforms typically have a predetermined margin, which is not as high as the margin we can achieve with stock production. Now that we understand a bit more about how an independent brand or influencer artist can produce, let's analyze the creative process of these artists or brands. One of the main ways to create their works, or at least the one I find most interesting, especially for influencer artists, is collaborative construction. Here, the audience suggests content of interest. Subsequently, the artist or brand serves as a conduit, channeling these ideas into tangible forms. They utilize their unique style or methods to effectively embody and represent those concepts. Now that we address this concept of collaborative construction, where artists or brands build with the audience, you might wonder how they manage to have that audience in advance, because without that audience, constant feedback can't be generated. Let's deconstruct it. This isn't an exact science, but entities or individuals can define their identity and target audience effectively. This facilitates feedback creation, broadening the product's reach. However, you may wonder, who exactly is the intended audience for this expansion? Well, to understand the target audience, first differentiate it from the concept of an audience. An audience includes anyone who could potentially consume or be exposed to our product. Conversely, the target audience comprises individuals crucial to our business strategy. It helps pinpoint where we genuinely aim to channel our efforts, ensuring our focus aligns with our strategic goals. Regardless of the fact that we will also reach other people, but this will be our focus. If we consider this visually, we will see that the target audience is invariably smaller than the broader public since it focuses on particular demographics or interests. Having grasped some aspects of defining a specific audience, one may ask, how exactly do I pinpoint and delineate my target demographic? The simplest method involves defining variables which are factors like demographic details, including age range, income bracket, education level, and other relevant traits that influence the behavior and preferences of our target audience. Beliefs, etc. To better determine these variables, we can generate two sets that will greatly help us organize them more easily. On one hand, we have hard variables, where you'll find gender, age, and occupation. On the other side, there are soft variables which include beliefs and other intangible factors. Interests, personality, and more. But how do you define these variables precisely? Well, there are many ways to define the target audience, but I propose exploring two. The initial method involves identifying individuals similar to yourself. This means filling in those variables by using your own traits as a guide. Consequently, each variable will be addressed by reflecting on your personal characteristics. On the other hand, the second approach involves defining the variables directly based on what you envision for your project. For instance, if your goal is to create a t-shirt project centered around an environmental care theme, you should consider which individuals might have an interest in that subject. Think about these people and provide suggestions on completing the variables. Additionally, include new variables to enhance the discussion relevant to that theme. In this case, for example, for that environmental theme, I'm not sure if it's relevant, for instance, to define people's gender, because it might be irrelevant. On the contrary, trying to define where they live could help you, for example, understand the language in which you will do your project. Let's look at a target audience example to give you a clearer picture of what I mean. In this case, I show you a chart that could easily represent an approximation of my target audience. In my case, I'm interested in reaching people who are passionate about memes, particularly Spanish-speaking ones. In hard variables, for example, we find that the general age range is usually between 15 and 45 years. This can be even broader, but if I have to narrow it down, this should at least be my guiding variable. This should at least be my guiding variable. In my view, gender doesn't matter much. Memes have the power to captivate anyone, regardless of gender. However, a more intriguing factor is my tendency to be more drawn to individuals with Argentine roots, which often piques my interest, because it will be easier for them to understand these memes, especially if they're from a Spanish-speaking country, as they likely have a closer connection with this type of content, or at least could interpret it. On the other hand, a fascinating aspect to consider is whether these individuals possess any background in design or artistic studies. Such experience typically correlates more closely with my current pursuits. Conversely, we encounter soft variables, such as an interest in fashion, humor, a belief in social contribution or aid, and an appreciation for music and the arts. These elements also play a significant role in shaping our preferences and connections. And above all, local interest in artists or bands matters greatly for Spanish-speaking meme fans. I hope this helps you grasp how to build your own target audience. Understanding the target audience lets us know who we are communicating with through our product, directly impacting our communication. It's crucial to define your target audience effectively for communication. Though not a science, this table will significantly assist us in navigating through our ideas effectively. You might wonder what this is useful for. Understanding the target audience helps us identify who we're communicating with through our product. This directly impacts our communication strategies, ensuring they are effective and resonate with the intended audience. Creating ads involves defining our product and determining which design types might be most effective. I encourage you to build your target audience, as this is crucial for effective communication and strategy development. To start giving it more direction and understanding what you want to achieve with this project. Well, now that we've covered all these theoretical notions that will help you organize your project a bit more, we'll see in the next lesson how to build your identity.